Don't you know, can't you, or won't you see Gene here alive and in living color, bringing you Gene Has Concerns, Kitchen Nightmares, 4-star diner. Wow, really cool episode. They were in Cortland, Ohio. Don't know where that is in Ohio. I think he said somewhere near Cleveland or something like that. I'm not positive. But welcome to this episode. And, this may be called the 4-star diner, but the food was the biggest nightmare there. And, Gus, the owner, kind of a pain in the ass. And Gordon was going to go in for a ride with this. I mean, you could tell right off the bat, just by his persona, who Gus was going to be. I've met Gus before, not really him, but people just like him. So, and wow, before I get too much deeper in the episode, let me share a couple of things. This is my companion show for Kitchen Nightmares. I got a few other companion shows for Dark Side of the Ring, for Expedition Unknown, and going to be coming out soon. I'm going to do Unreal. After I watch those 5 episodes, I'll do one show on that big lot. So, and another thing, I got to tell you right now, stay tuned to the end of this episode because I've got a big announcement about my top 9. I think everybody's going to like what I'm going to be doing weekly with that. So just stick around. Now, I've got a couple of things I've got to share with you later on towards the end of the episode of things I found and researched or, had questions on. So again, stick around for that also so you can see what those kind of reveals are. But now let's meet 4-Star Diner. And here's their sign out front. Again, Cortland, Ohio. And it's owned by Gus and Abgy. I'm not going to try to pronounce last names here. Look like a nice Greek family. And Guy says diners were the future of his business. And American food, good prices, burgers, Italian dishes, breakfast, etc. Employees describe the place as a second home. Regular customers come 3 or 4 times a week. The staff say they were like family with the customers. So then we get to see what's really going on. Employee after employee gives the same answer. Gus. That's the problem with the restaurant. Customer complaints do not seem to matter to him. Customers have walked out because of the way he treats the employees. Staff do not know which version of Gus will appear. So on a daily basis, they don't know who they're going to get. He hovers, criticizes, interrupts, creates more stress than solves, and you even see him getting in the way later on. It's not simply just bad management, a badly managed restaurant. It's a workplace built around one man's moods. And the staff, they can't just walk out. That's their livelihoods. That's what they do for a living, So they can't just say sayonara because there might not be other opportunities in that little Ohio town. So then we meet Lexi. Lexi is the head cook. Started off as a server, and now she's the head cook. Go figure. They needed help in the kitchen. She stopped serving, went in the kitchen for a little bit, and she's been stuck there ever since. But at least she's willing to learn. And you'll see, if you watch this episode, you'll see how she, she's eager to learn. She's eager to understand. She likes the criticism when dishes come back and Chef Ramsay was saying this, that, and the other about the dishes. She said thank you to the waitress giving her that feedback because she needs to know that kind of stuff. So now, Lexi admits most of what she knows from watching cooking shows, hopefully Gordon Ramsay shows. But lots of times steak temperatures or egg temperatures are off. And Gus, he claims, I trained her. She's like a sponge. Lexi admittedly says, I've never been trained. So who are you going to believe there? You kind of see Gus in a little bit, what he's really doing. Those two lines, they just contradict each other, When anything goes wrong, Lexi and the staff take the blame. Lexi's inexperienced, but she's honest, proud of her work, and clearly wants to learn, like I just said. So, original menu, 135 items on a menu. Why? Why? Figure out what's not selling and move it off the menu. If you sell 5 beef stroganoffs a month, guess what? You ain't selling very many beef stroganoffs. Get it off the menu. So, but if the owner never properly trained the cook, how can you blame the cook in the first place? But that's what Gus does. So, now, Gordon sits down, he places his order, gets some of his food. We see him. He gets a Greek omelet, buffalo chicken strips, salmon with vegetables, and a Route 46 burger. It's kind of like a steak burger. Entire staff just watches him. And I've noticed this in other shows too, that he visits a restaurant and everybody stares at him. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? And for me, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could handle that. He's probably used to it by now. Number one, he's a star. He used to people watching him anyway. But even in that scenario, he's probably like, I'm here to taste the food, not here to worry about all these other people. You know? And let's go with the food. Gordon says the Greek omelet, overcooked and rubbery, buffalo strips, frozen and dry. Gus claims the sauce is their own recipe for the buffalo strips. Lexi says it came straight out of a jar, and we even see her pouring it out. So the salmon and frozen vegetables, disgusting. And Gordon spits out his food. The burger. It's like, he even says, this smells a little bit weird before he tastes it. Don't ask me to do his accent. But even, says that. So it's like, come on. So staff tells Gordon everything is fresh, even when it's not, because Gus tells them to. Gus tells them to lie. And Gus hovers nearby, but tries to appear calm for the cameras. So Gus is performing. We see this. Gordon sees this. The staff see this. He's not being himself. And it's like, really? And then Apke, his wife, she sits down with Gordon and she breaks down. And they don't go through much, but, she and the employees have, lived with the behavior of Gus for years. So she becomes emotional, and Gus is a central problem. Gus insists everything is fine and the tables are full. He's delusional. He's absolutely delusional. Should be a song. Is there a song called? Put in the comments. If someone has a song of that, send me a link or something in the comments. If there's a song called Delusional. Just not someone write a song. He's delusional. She's delusional. I can't say. Anyway, but we know that. Tables are not full. If they are, people aren't eating all their food. We start seeing food being thrown away. And Gus blames the economy, the location, the staff, cleanliness problems, food problems. What he doesn't blame is Gus. Wonder why. Staff tells Gordon the truth. Gordon takes the front of the house staff aside, and they say, they're flying by the seat of their pants every day. Gus orders them to tell customers that frozen food is fresh. He orders servers to say the buffalo sauce was homemade. And they confirm that he's on his best behavior right now because Gordon's there and the cameras are there. And normally he yells and screams even in front of the customers. So, now, little side note here, a teaser for a little bit later. We saw one clip earlier, and then we see it again. Gus is walking by one of these refrigerators, and we notice the brand looks like a huge piece of red masking tape. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a red magnet or something kind of covering the brand. So, we're going to remember that scene because we're going to cover that a little bit later. So, now, this other part is it's a perfect opportunity when Gordon's realizing that Gus is faking it. Wish he could have brought in one of his secret agents one of the secret chefs to pose as a customer. When chef and the cameras weren't there and just the other monitor cameras were around to kind of see how Gus really acts. So then the dinner service comes around and the mask comes off. The kitchen has no clear organization. Lexi's running multiple stations with inadequate systems. The orders start dragging. The food's being returned. and Gus suddenly puts on an apron and goes behind the line. Something the employees say he never normally does. So there's part of the act again. And he becomes an obstacle for people. Gordon confronts him and calls him out on it. He's faking it. Gus gives his word. I'm a man. This is not an act. Gordon says he does not trust him and smells a rat. Now, Gordon says the product is not frozen. Or Gus says the product's not frozen. And Gordon forces him through the logic until Gus finally admits it was frozen. Lexi says Gus has become so used to lying that he cannot admit when he's wrong. Not a good boss. Frozen food is bad enough. Now, I eat frozen food, but I'm not serving it to people. I'm not trying to make money off people, and I'm not trying to pass it as fresh fruit or fresh vegetables. But ordering employees to say these things, that's wrong, and he's in denial. Now we get to the filth, and you see here, Gus claims they do a deep cleaning nightly. Look at this. It's fracking disgusting. What in the world? That's old food, grease, grime. Anyway, yuck. And wonder what else Gordon is going to find. Gus argues with Gordon instead of protecting customers. He turns to the diners and tells them not to come back. So Gordon's showing them the stinky hamburger meat, passing around the stainless steel tray that it's in for the customers to smell it. And Gus is like, no, it's perfectly fine. So, and he gets pissed and forces everybody out. So, I don't know. Bottom line, Gus is a flaming idiot. You don't chase off your customers. You don't yell at your customers like that. Bottom line, that's just disgusting all the way around, the whole thing. Now, something else I'm going to talk about later in the episode. What happens to the employees when Gordon shuts down a restaurant or an owner like Gus throws everybody out? And it's like, the employees are now out of money. They're out of all those tips, unless people just still leave a tip because they like them or they're being nice or something. And what about the back of house? So we'll get into that a little bit. I'm not going to touch on it too much. There's some legalities involved also, and I don't know Ohio state laws, but we'll get a little bit of a gist to that. So Gordon walks out. Gordon's had enough of Gus. If Gus is going to continue to lie and blame everybody else and not see that he's part of the problem, Gordon's like, okay, I'm walking. Now, one of the producers comes in and talks to Gus, and they go back in his office. And producer lies, but I understand why he's lying. Gordon's never done this before. Well, yes, he has. He watched the show. He's left before and come back before. Sometimes he's turned around on his own. Other times people will call and say, hey, can you please come back? I'm sorry. And, Gus, he gets pissed off at the customers. You can see here, this is a motion screenshot where he knocks over his coffee and something else off the desk because he's all pissed off, and now he's yelling at the producer to leave. Get your cameras and get out. Again, flaming idiot. They're there to help. So, I don't know. It just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It's unusual production to get involved like that. I think I've only seen one other instance where they kind of got involved. But, it's likely a field producer out there, or a couple of them. We saw another woman there also walk in the scene. And, Gus is just wrong. Now, reality television usually keeps the machinery behind the curtain, but we got to see a little bit of this. And, the show wants us to see that this has moved beyond a normal Gordon versus an owner type argument. So, and the staff, they can't function without Gus, but he's the problem. So Gus needs to change. It's an emotional turning point because Gordon comes back, calls Gus with all the employees around. Gus comes back. Gus actually apologizes. That was the one thing Gordon wanted and why he walked out was Gus wasn't going to apologize to the employees. Gus apologizes. Seemed heartfelt. We really don't know. But, 15 years being in business and acting like this, and one day apologizing, I might have to fish to see if I can find one of these other, servers or someone who can maybe answer some more questions, maybe do an interview. And let's see how Gus is nowadays. Again, we believe this was filmed last year sometime, just over a year ago. So maybe within the year. Now, the refurbishing, the front of house, totally revamped. Even one of the servers said, wow, look at the lamps. And you can see the lamps here. Back of the house, really refurbished. Beautiful. New equipment. New fryers, new griddle, new imperial stove and range, new pots and pans, including the Hexclad, new knives, new china, new tableware, microplane graters, and smallers, or other small wares. That's great. Now, here's something else I'm going to reveal towards the end. How much is all that? It's a lot of money. And we've seen sometimes, like the last episode, the team didn't go all out with a full revamp. This looks like more of a revamp. We've seen them totally scrap and start from scratch on some of these revamps. So you got to wonder who's actually paying for that. So, but they overhauled the venue, no more 135 items. They got firecracker shrimp now, baked feta, pork chops, buffalo chicken dip. And Lexi gets actual training, and Gordon brings in some other chefs and other back house help to kind of help her along and train her. And Gordon teaches her, how to make an omelet. So, and then they relaunch without Gus. Gordon decided, let's see how the house runs with Gus not in the picture. He'll show up later and see how things are running. So that was delivered on him. And wanted to prove the staff can do it without him. There was no tension, better communication, more positive atmosphere. Lexi struggled briefly with fresh pork because she'd never cooked fresh before. So, go figure. But they're teaching her. And staff report no complaints. All the customers love the food. This experiment that proves the episode's thesis, Gus was not simply failing to help, or what, his presence was actively making everyone worse. With systems, smaller menu, actual training, and less fear, the same staff performs. So, now let me get into these little teasers I gave you earlier. Let's go back to that refrigerator. That's clearly a Pepsi advertisement inside that refrigerator. It's one of the Pepsi refrigerators that stock the drinks or whatever else they're using it for. And, the practice is called Greeking. No pun intended with the family being Greek there. That's just what it's called in TV lingo, I guess. And television productions sometimes will cover up brand names. So they don't want to give that free advertising. Other times, there might be a concern that the brand may not want their product shown on a TV show that has dirty kitchens or whatever the case might be. So, a broadcaster or sponsor may have exclusivity concerns also, that maybe they're exclusive to certain types of shows or these certain shows, and they can't have their brand shown on Gordon Ramsay shows. There's all sorts of different reasons. We see TV shows where they black out the Ford emblem or the Chevy emblem on front of the vehicle. You can still tell what it is. You know exactly what the vehicle is, but they're not going to be, show the brand. And we've seen the same thing with laptops. The Apple, icon is changed. It's lit up differently or completely covered up. So, and I couldn't find a definitive reason why this particular show does that, this production does that. It could also be a Fox request. We don't know. But, I think it's kind of odd, but, go figure. So the answer is they legally still have to be paid. Oh, I'm sorry. Moving on to the next option was what happened to the server's tips. Now, I couldn't find reliable sources on exactly what happens, The workers remain employees. Federal wage law still applies during filming. If an employer uses tip credit and wages plus actual tips do not reach the required minimum wage, the employer must make up the difference. I couldn't find anything where Fox or Gordon Ramsay's production company or whoever was actually footing the bill or paying them. And I don't know if they get, like other TV shows, like Hell's Kitchen, those contestants, they get paid a base fee for being on TV for each show they're on, each episode they're on. I don't know if that works out here or not. So anybody have that answer, please leave a comment, let us all know. Or if you know where I can find the answer or talk to anybody, reach me in the comments. Maybe I'll do an interview and find out more. So now then the third thing that I was going to reveal, kind of, because I couldn't find a lot, was, the makeover cost. It's Fox and the production company. It's not published anything about itemized, refurbishes. And they can kind of go low end, maybe 35,000, plausible upper end 75,000 or more, depending on how much they're doing. Now, I'm sure they get deals from Hexclad and from, what was it, Victory, some of these other brand companies and stuff. I'm sure they get, probably discounts because they're getting the promotional advertising on the show. But my guess is that, we're in the right neighborhood. I'd say we actually see a roughly that much money, and unless Fox shows use receipts, nobody really knows outside the production of what's going on. So, but they're still in business. Here's their Facebook page right here. They were heavily promoting the show. And the makeover happened in June 2025. There's that information I was looking for. But just aired this past week. And at the end of the episode, we did a 4-month update, and Gus says business has increased 30%. And later in a news interview, Gus is saying that, it's increased by 60%. Now, we already know Gus is a liar, so we don't know the truth. I hope they're doing that good. That would be fantastic. But we don't know. They started going back to the older menu again, some of the items, and the reviews have been kind of mixed, lean more positive, but there was some mixed reviews. Many praise the food and the service, but some criticize the return of the to the old menu and some of the items renewed, or some of the items, and then the renewed cleanliness and food concerns are kind of coming back. So did Gus just take the money and run and go back to his old ways, or what? We don't know. Like I said, if anybody knows these people and can put me in contact with one of the servers or one of the back of house people, Lexi or whoever, let me know in the comments. I'd love to interview them and get the real story. So, my final thoughts. The strongest character was Lexi and her willingness to learn, and she was a sponge, just Gus didn't teach her. The staff runs better without Gus. So, another thing I want to say about Abby, and I don't know, this might be more of the traditional Greek family scenario. She didn't have much of a voice. She didn't stop and scold Gus or say, Gus, stop, when he was throwing people out. She might have said a couple things, but, she took the submissive wife position, it looked like. And like I said, that might be their family way. I don't know. But I was kind of hoping that she was going to say, hey, stop. But what can you do? So, the most disturbing behaviors were lying about the frozen food, lying about the other food, ordering service to repeat the lies, refusing responsibility of the filthy kitchen, telling customers not to return, and the most unusual moment, production stepping on screen and confronting Gus after Gordon leaves. So, 4-star diner had employees who cared, customers who cared, and a community that cared. Who wasn't really caring? Now, my Poopsie rating. 4 Poopsies out of 5 for the diner. Not for the employees, but for Gus and the conditions. Now, granted, those employees could have stepped up a little bit more with the cleanliness also, but if the boss doesn't care, why should they care? There's a pattern there. So, now, do you believe Gus really changed? Or do you think he's gone back to his old ways? Do you think he's nicer or meaner? Back to his mean ways? Do you think he's gone back to the type of food he's serving and lying about it? And would you eat there now? If you went through town, would you seek it out and say, hey, let me try this place I saw it on TV? I don't know if I would after knowing that he may have gone back to some of his old ways. Again, I want to interview someone. But, I invite you to leave me comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you know something. Let me know if you're from that town and have eaten there recently or whenever. Now, tomorrow, this is one of my announcements. Tomorrow is my first top 9. It's going to be a weekly video that I do. Hope you enjoy it. Kind of like David Letterman, but kind of not. So, and at the end of tomorrow's episode, I've got another announcement. So make sure to tune in for that. And, I got more shorts coming. I got more ideas to do. And one thing I do want to share with you also is think about this. If you're a small business or any business and you'd like for me to wear your t-shirt while I'm doing one of these videos, whether it's one of my shorts or my longs, you can send me a t-shirt. Leave a comment that you want to send me a t-shirt. We'll get in touch. And I need to set up a new email address just for that, hoping that it's going to be genehasconcerns.tshirts@gmail.com. I got to make sure that's available. Pretty sure it is, but I just haven't done that yet. But keep that in mind. If you're a business, you want your t-shirt kind of seen while I'm doing these, feel free to send me one. So now, just want to thank you for watching. I hope you watched through the whole thing. Please like, share, comment, and definitely subscribe. You're going to be a part of something big here in the future. And one last thing, always remember, Gene has concerns.